What if I told you that debt isn't always the thing keeping you poor? Sometimes the problem isn't having debt, it's using the wrong debt for the wrong purpose. We all have been taught one simple rule our entire life: stay away from debt. So we avoid credit cards, loans, and leverage. Sounds smart, right? But then I discovered something strange. Some wealthy people don't necessarily avoid debt. They ask a completely different question. What is this debt doing for me? Because there is a massive difference between borrowing $10,000 to buy something that loses value and borrowing $10,000 to potentially control an asset, business, or cash flow that can produce more than the borrowing costs. Today, we are uncovering 5 debt strategies that can completely change the way you think about borrowing. And the 5th one is especially interesting because it involves turning debt into a financial speed booster without simply betting your money on the stock market. But first, let's learn the golden rule of debt. Wait, so I borrow at 7% and make 10%? Slow down. This is where people get themselves into trouble. The idea is called the interest rate spread. Imagine you have access to borrowing at 7%, and you have a legitimate opportunity where the expected return is 10%. On paper, there is a 3 percentage point gap. That gap is the potential engine, but there is a catch. The return is not guaranteed. The loan payment, however, is very real. If your investment falls 30%, your lender doesn't suddenly say, "That's okay, buddy, markets are down." In this case, you still owe the money. So the secret isn't borrow cheaply and invest aggressively. It's only consider borrowing when the expected economic benefit comfortably exceeds the total cost and risk of the debt. And that leads to the first rule. Not slightly less. Ideally, there should be a meaningful safety margin, and never confuse a historical investment return with a guaranteed future return. But here's where things get more interesting. What if you could use debt without depending entirely on an investment's price going up? That's strategy number 2. Here's a simple question. If you borrow $20,000, what happens to that $20,000 afterward? If the answer is, I bought something I wanted, you've created a liability. But if the answer is, I bought something that can generate cash flow, now the equation changes. Think about a small business. A photographer borrows money for equipment that helps generate additional bookings. A business owner finances inventory that can be sold for a profit. The debt itself isn't creating wealth. The productive asset is. Divide debt into 2 buckets. Consumption debt, money borrowed to buy things that generally don't produce income. Productive debt, money borrowed for something that has a reasonable path to generating income or increasing productive capacity. But there's another layer. Suppose you borrow $10,000 for a project. The project generates $300 a month in additional cash flow. Your debt payment is $200. That leaves a theoretical $100 monthly difference before taxes, maintenance, unexpected costs, and other expenses. That's the part people miss. The goal isn't simply to own more, it's to create a system where an asset can help service the debt. And this brings us to a surprisingly powerful concept: let the asset help pay for itself. But what if you already have expensive debt? That's where strategy 3 enters. Drop a like and subscribe to the channel to get more such ideas and get wired for money. Meet your most expensive roommate: high-interest debt. It eats money every month without producing anything. Now imagine $10,000 of debt at 24% APR. That's potentially around $2,400 a year in simple annual interest before considering how balances and payments actually work. Instead of investing first, you have another option: reduce the cost of the debt. This is the basic idea behind a debt swap. You replace expensive debt with cheaper debt when the terms genuinely make sense. That might involve refinancing, consolidating, or in some circumstances, using a promotional balance transfer. But this isn't free money. Balance transfers can carry fees, promotional rates expire, and the rate afterward can be much higher. Never look at the headline rate alone. Look at APR plus fees plus promotional period plus payoff plan. For example, if moving $10,000 of debt costs a 4% fee, that's $400 immediately. You calculate the entire deal. And here's the clever part. Every dollar of interest you permanently eliminate can become future investing capacity. If reducing debt saves you $150 a month, that's $150 you can redirect toward building an emergency fund, investing, or another productive goal. But we've been talking about making existing debt cheaper. What if you could use debt to buy time? That's strategy 4. Here's a strange financial idea. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can buy isn't an asset, It's time. Imagine you need $5,000 to acquire equipment that allows you to start a side business. If you wait 3 years to save the entire $5,000, you may avoid debt, but you also lose 3 years of potential learning, customers, cash flow, and experience. Now, that doesn't automatically mean you should borrow the $5,000. The question becomes, what does borrowing allow me to accomplish sooner? This is the hidden power of productive leverage. Debt can compress the timeline between idea to asset to cash flow, but only if the numbers work. You have to ask 3 questions before borrowing. Does the debt buy something productive? Can I comfortably make payments even if income disappoints? Do I have an exit plan? That third question is crucial, because debt without an exit plan is basically a financial escape room where the door keeps moving. And there's one more danger. You must never use short-term debt to fund a long-term uncertain bet. That's how a clever strategy turns into a financial headache. And now we reach the most misunderstood strategy of all. Most beginners think of debt as one giant category, but sophisticated money management treats debt more like a ladder. At the bottom, high-interest consumer debt. Next, lower-cost debt used for refinancing or restructuring. Higher, debt supporting productive assets or businesses. And at the top, strategic leverage used by financially strong people who understand the risks. The mistake is trying to jump straight to the top. Instead, you climb one step at a time. First, eliminate toxic debt. Second, build an emergency buffer. Third, strengthen cash flow. Fourth, understand how different borrowing costs affect returns. Only then should more sophisticated leverage even enter the conversation. And importantly, this does not mean borrowing money to gamble on stocks. Margin investing can magnify losses, trigger margin calls, and allow a brokerage firm to liquidate securities. So your final rule becomes, never use leverage to compensate for a weak financial foundation. Use it only when the underlying economics are strong enough to justify the risk. And that's the real secret. Debt isn't automatically wealth building, and debt isn't automatically wealth destroying. It's a tool. A hammer can build a house. It can also destroy a wall. The difference is the person holding it. So remember the 5 strategies. 1. Look for a meaningful interest rate gap while respecting investment risk. 2. Prefer debt connected to productive cash flow rather than consumption. 3. Look for opportunities to reduce expensive debt but calculate fees and terms. 4. Use debt cautiously when it can accelerate access to a productive opportunity. 5. Build a leverage ladder instead of jumping straight into sophisticated borrowing. And here's the question you should ask before taking on any debt. Will this debt make future me richer or simply make future me busier? Because the fastest way to grow your money isn't necessarily borrowing more. Sometimes it's learning exactly when not to borrow. If this video helped your perspective, check these videos next and get wired for money.